you know, 100-pound gorilla in any research in the United States is the National Institutes of Health. They have always tended to do more basic research in universities primarily, and then the private sector is supposed to take those out, those findings, and make products, be they drugs or vaccines. With vaccines and the market failure, NIH has gotten more and more in trying to do product development. That's tough for them. They're very risk adverse, very bureaucratic, but they're trying. But at least there is NIH, and they put some of the money into our trial, very little. The other organization right now is the International AIDS Vaccine Initiative in New York. That, as I mentioned, that we started, it was really a California endeavor where we decided that something had to be done and started it off, and then folks from the Rockefeller Foundation carried it on. That actually is probably the prototype of what Gates wants to do. Gates wants to set up 6 to 10 of these, what they call AIDS vaccine development centers, of which we presume we are hoped to be one of them. And the International AIDS Vaccine Initiative will be another, and maybe some academic centers will be a third. But it'll be a competitive yet collaborative endeavor where some things will be shared, like some of the laboratory things, and others will be competitive. And it will be very interesting to see. This is truly a social experiment. Now, it's been done before, and it goes back to the social value question. Think about the polio vaccine. We didn't have recombinant technology then. People really didn't know much about how to make vaccines at that stage. I worked a lot with Jonas Salk in the early days of AIDS vaccine work, and I said, well, Jonas, at least it was easy then that you set the Foundation for Infantile Paralysis up, and he said, Jonas, you make a kill vaccine, Albert, you make a live attenuated vaccine, and the Sabin and Salk vaccine came from that. He said, oh, that's not the way it was at all. But there was the Foundation for Infantile Paralysis. Why was there? In terms of the them and us issue, who had polio at that time? The President of the United States was in a wheelchair because of polio. So they started the Foundation for Infantile Paralysis, and Franklin Roosevelt was essentially, they had the initial parties where the March of Dimes, where they would send dimes in the White House, and the post office, the heads of the post office were out there collecting them. And then they said, oh, this is probably not right. And then they moved it over to a foundation. But that was a them and us issue. This was an us problem. And polio was a problem of the middle class that came up in the 50s. I mean, because once you weren't eating feces as a young child, by doing that, you got immunized when you had maternal antibody. And when you got cleaner environments, then you became susceptible, and you had all these middle class folks in Marin County, where I was raised, that ended up getting polio, and it was a scary thing in the 50s. But the President of the United States had it. So then there was money to make vaccines, and they gave some to Jonas Salk and to Albert Sabin and the like, and you had a vaccine. So there was a driving force there of a non-for-profit organization that actually drove because there was social value given to it. And there was never the mortality from polio. It was a horrible disease, but never the mortality like we see from HIV.